Welcome back to the course. This is week 4 on human-computer interaction. I hope you're having fun in terms of learning new content, new concepts through this course. I hope you're also trying. As I said in the first lecture, this course is heavily dependent on things that you're going to try beyond these lectures or videos that you're sitting and listening. I hope you're actually trying. I hope you're actually also able to learn from the process of trying things. And that's why we have also kept this lab kind of sessions every week, where you're also getting hands-on experience, hands-on tutorial on different tools, different methods, and different techniques. We'll continue doing that. Let me show you what I have for today. The first topic that I wanted to cover is actually how to understand user needs, right? So because, meaning the topics that we have seen until now, contextual inquiry, think aloud that we'll be seeing very soon, all of it is actually driven by what users want. The goal is for us as a designer, for us as an administrator for collecting this data, for us as a researcher, you want to know what user needs are. That's the first fundamental question that we have to ask. So there are many methods that can be used for collecting data about what users want. I'm going to talk about a few of the methods today. The first one is called cognitive walkthrough. So cognitive walkthrough is a method in which you as a administrator, you as a researcher, you as a designer, what you're going to do is you're going to think that I'm the user now, what do I do in a given situation? For example, again, I'll take the simple example of designing a remote for the slide changer. If I were to design this, if I were to make a better design, or if the company that I work for, or if my customer who is actually paying me to do this has asked me to do a new design for this remote, I'll think of myself as a user, and I will actually think aloud about the actions that I will do, right? As a user, I'm trying to open where the battery is, and I see that there is also a USB dongle that I have to put it inside the laptop or the machine where I can control the slides. And there is some buttons here to change slides ahead, slide backward, and things like that. As a user, you think, again, let's go back to the example of Uber. As a user, you would think, using the app, what all decisions you can make, how you're looking at it, what things are you considering while making the decision. That's the cognitive walkthrough methodology. So here, what are you doing? You're actually behaving as though you're the user and trying to collect the data about how a user will react. And in the process, you're actually finding out what the user needs are. Because when you're explaining, you would say that, oh, another thing that I want to do is when I'm giving a talk or a lecture, I want to actually point to some parts of the slide and I want a pointer to it. So you can actually say that, oh, there should be a pointer there. As a user, I would need a pointer in the slide changer. So this is a good way to start the design thinking, right? Because you can actually say that, okay, Uber app is there. I want to actually look at what the rating of the users are. Oh, I want to know whether I want to take this cab. It looks like the driver may be shady, so I want to actually cancel it. Or you spoke on the phone with the driver and you did not have a good opinion about the user. He asked you for where the drop-off is before you actually started speaking to him and things like that. You want to cancel. There should be an easier way to cancel the booking without having any after effects of it. Right? So that's the user need, and that user need is getting converted into a action, converted into a thought process for you as a user when you're doing a cognitive walkthrough and you're actually explaining it explicitly or in the think aloud, which can be captured to build a user needs. I hope that's getting clear about what a cognitive walkthrough is. And it's not a comprehensive method, right? Because you're, first of all, I think later in the course we'll also see about why considering yourself as a user is actually wrong, because you're not the real user, you're not a representative of the user body that you want to study also, right? Let's take if I want to build an app which is for the cab service like Uber, as a user, if I want to do that, I actually don't use Uber much. So therefore, it may not be representative of the user body that I'm going to study or for whom I'm building if I were to play the role of a user. Right? So that's why it's a hashtag to keep in mind that are you a real representative user? So that's basics about how to understand users. We'll actually get into this more and more detail. And the first method is cognitive walkthrough. Here are the other methods that we can use. I'll go through each of these methods in slightly detail to just to give you a sense of what are the different ways that you can actually collect data. Until now in the course, we have not collected a lot of data. We've done this contextual inquiry, which is asking user how they would actually behave in a particular situation. But there are more structured, more unstructured ways of actually collecting data also. The three things that I will talk about and give you some details is in the slides, how to actually go about doing this: surveys, interviews, and focus group discussions. And the goal, following up on the cognitive walkthroughs, to get a quick understanding of the problem, of the situation that you're trying to study. It may be helpful in making some decisions, and it is definitely not generalizable to many situations. None of these methods are going to be comprehensive in terms of actually collecting data. So some parts of topics that I will not cover on this course is like sampling of subjects. Right, sampling of subjects, which is how do you go find which subjects to study, right? How do you pick the user? All of that is something I will not study. I will not talk about in this course. But quickly, I'll tell you, you want to be making sure that the users that you're going to collect, the users that you're going to study, are some representative of the broader users or broader population that you want to study. But it's actually hard, right? There are convenient sampling, there are stratified sampling. There are many methods to do design, how to sample the user, sample the subjects from the population, but it is actually a harder problem given a particular context that you want to study. Here are two interesting quotes that I like. One is, if I would ask people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? That was said by Henry Ford when he was asked about why are you building this car, right? So basically, when you the criticism or the way to look at this, look at the next quote also. It's really hard to design products by focus groups. A lot of times, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. Both are actually of the same philosophy. That is, if you ask users what they want, generally what they're going to tell you is probably not going to be great use. But if you show them something and ask them, okay, now this is what I want you to give me feedback on, people tend to be being more constructive. People tend to be more giving inputs, which are very useful. So just keep this in mind. We'll look at these different methods as we proceed in the lecture. So let's look at first interviews. I'm also walking you through the topics in the order that I think works out very well. Interviews, next to the cognitive walkthrough. What is this? This is basically getting some set of users from your sample, from your population to study on the topic that you're interested in, which is, let's take for building a next food rating app or a food service app. In this interviews method, you generally have a limited number of participants because you're getting only like few users into the lab, or you're going to the place and collecting some data from the users. And it just helps. So interviews are not generally you're not going to do interviews with like 400 people. You're probably going to do interviews with like 10 people, right? So therefore, the scope of this interview or the outcomes of these interviews will help you to narrow down the scope of the options or the directions, right? So that's the reason why you want to do interviews. And interviews can actually help you to find out things that you did not know, because when you're sitting and speaking with people are going to give, users are going to give you a lot of inputs, which may or may not be something that you thought about before. So therefore, interviews is an important method for collecting data from users. Focus group discussions. Focus group discussions are also important. Is that it is the next level from the interviews. Interview is, I'm doing an interview with one person. In focus group discussion, I'm going to do this discussion with, let's take 8 to 10 participants. And it's usually suggested that you want to keep the participants to 8 to 10, because otherwise you can't do a focus group discussion with 20 people. That's not going to be very productive in that sense. So what does this focus group discussion, FGD, so to say, helps? FGDs helps you to narrow down more from the conclusions that you got from interviews. Because what's going to happen? Just think about this, right? Methodologically think about how it's working. First, I want to do a design, I want to develop something. I started doing my cognitive walkthrough, which is me as a user. I'm trying to speak about what's going to happen or input for the user. Then next I do interviews. I'm going to speak with one by one the participant. Now I'm putting 10 people, 10 different people, not the same set of people, 10 different people into a room and speaking about the inputs from them. Advantages of doing focus group is that, let's take there is a person saying a view, there's another person who may complement or contradict and have discussion on it. So through this process, you will end up actually learning what are a set of users that you're interested in have in mind in terms of developing the user needs. Again, the goal for this lecture or this week is to find out what users need. Again, helps in FGD helps in narrowing down further with arguments back and forth between the users. And some caution that I will give you for FGDs, you want to be careful about some users not taking away the discussion in one direction. Right? They will hijack the discussion into a view that they are interested in or view that they think is the right view. So you want to be very careful when such things happen. That's when a moderator, as an administrator or a researcher, you inside the room should be able to actually control the discussion and bring it back to the questions that you're interested in answering. So that's one key thing that you want to keep in mind in focus group discussions, is that the moderator should be able to bring back the discussion, bring back the conversation into the topics that you are interested in finally, the questions that you have. Because again, you're not going to spend a focus group discussion for like 4 hours, right? You're going to probably spend an hour, hour and a half, or probably max of 2 hours. So you want to get everything that you want from this set of users by asking the questions, by making sure that the conversation goes in the direction that you are interested in. Okay. The next thing, and potentially the last thing in this line of thinking, is the survey design. Surveys. So why should you actually do a survey? Why surveys are important? Because if you really look at it, cognitive walkthrough, me, interviews, set of people, focus group discussion, still a set of people. So I haven't yet figured out what a large set of population, large set of users actually think about the design, think about the way that I wanted to design, think about user needs basically. I still don't know what a large set of users needs are. That's why you need survey design. So it basically collects quantitative data for a topic of interest. It will help you to say 64% of 600 people that we studied said this. Whereas in the interview and focus group discussion, all of it, you can say that 60% of the people that we interviewed said this, but that's just only 6 people if you've interviewed 10 people. And by the way, in the interviews and focus group discussions, in the focus group discussions at least, you really want to make sure that you do the focus group discussion at least twice or thrice, which is you want to make sure that it is done with a group of 8, another group of 8, or another group of 8. And survey also helps you to collect information that is not available otherwise, which is secondary pieces of information, which is you are studying, let's take, doing the next carpooling app, but in the process, when you ask people, when you ask a large set of people, as in the interviews, as in the focus group discussions, you're going to get inputs which are also sort of secondary types, which are not the primary ones, which may be useful to you. You can represent, again, 64%. Statistical representation of population of interest is through only survey. Survey is the only way by which you can get that. So sometimes what is going to happen is in the interview, in the focus group discussions, it may not be that you have a protocol and you will keep asking the same questions the way it is, right? In an interview, it's going to be a flow. You're going to get the user, you're going to possibly get the user to speak, and in the process, you will probably end up modifying the questions a little bit, or not probably ask in the same order that you get, because otherwise it's going to disturb the process in which the user is also thinking. So in the survey, but that's not the way it is going to happen. It's the same set of questions among every participant, every person who's filling the survey. So survey design, right? So the question that I wanted to pose to you is that how does it relate to what we covered until now in class, right? So the way that I think about survey design is that it is important to do this survey design very well. Actually, the way I'm going to address this is, it may not be just a survey design, but I'm just going to give next few slides on just how to create good questions. right? Because in the interviews, in the focus group discussions, in the user needs data collection process, you have to actually collect data. You have to ask questions, right? You have to ask questions. So I'm going to just discuss some ways of asking good questions. So in the survey design modes, that what all you can do, you can actually do personal, which is that I have a printout, I have my iPad in which the questions are loaded. I'm going to take the iPad to, I mean, I'm sure many of you would have filled these kind of surveys. Let's take when you're standing in a metro. Actually, recently I saw people ask questions on a toll booth, right? Where they're saying, oh, how many times do you take this road? And they were having a sheet of paper in which they're filling the answers for. That's like personal. Or you could just call up and ask people the same questions and mark the answers yourself. You can send it by mail, you can do a web data collection, and you can probably think of hybrid also. I've done some studies where I've done hybrid data collection, which is one study, collected data for 10,000 people, but used many different methods from this. Let me just show you briefly about each method, so you can actually think about what methods will you use while you're making the decision on what type of method will be useful for the data collection that you're doing. Now let's look at some ways by which we can actually collect this data through survey. First method is personal. Survey design personal, right? So in this method, the way that we'll collect data is in person. That is, you take the questionnaire and collect the data in person. Since I have a questionnaire of data to collect, I'll actually go in person, meet with people, ask them to fill the survey, and we'll actually get response from them. Meaning, I'm sure you would have been part of such kind of studies where people would stand in a mall, people would stand in a railway station and ask you to fill a survey. Right? And when you're doing this, the response rate is very high because I think you're going to be in person. People are going to be generally obligated to fill the survey, and therefore your response rate may be very high. And may allow for longer survey, which is that you can actually do a 15, 20, 25, 30 different questions where you can actually get people to fill the answer. And among the methods that we'll talk about, this is actually the most time consuming one. It's also very costly because it's the time of the administrator and the time of the people who are going to go collect this data. And it will also have there should be a person walking around and collecting this data. So that's the first method, which is personal. Next one is the telephone one. So in the telephone one, the way it would work is that I'm sure now you would even have methods like even in the YouTube when you're watching a video, you will actually end up getting some surveys for you to be filled. That's also another method that one could actually use. In the telephone method, random digits dialing, so which is that they pick meaning they have all the numbers that to call, they're going to call the people and ask for responses for the questions. I'm sure you're getting some calls. I've gotten calls like saying somebody needs blood, somebody needs information. All of these kind of calls come in to your number, and similarly you can actually call up people to collect data. I myself have done studies where we have created these IVR kind of system where we'll call numbers and ask them to actually punch different digits for different answers for the question. This method is definitely less expensive than personal, shorter time than personal for sure. Interviewer administration is still there because I think the person is calling them and asking, somebody is calling them, calling the user and asking for the response. But then there is also bias in the data that is being collected because it's actually having, it is only looking at people who have access to phones. I think it's the same kind of criticism you will have when you see studies where the data is collected to Mechanical Turk, right? So there the response rate is coming from only people who are on Mechanical Turk or only people who have access to the internet. So that's the methodological constraint that you have in terms of actually who is the participant who is getting access to this data. I think another constraint in the methodology of telephone is that The complex questionnaire is hard to ask, right? Because you can say that, oh, if you have answered 4 in the question number 3, which is the option number 4 in the question number 3, jump to question number 7, right? These kind of complex jumping is hard to ask, and probably also asking sensitive information is probably difficult to get through a telephone study. Mail one, so right, so low cost than personal and phone because you're actually sending it by physical mail. Data can be collected from population that is difficult to reach and locate, because now you just have a set of address, you're sending it to them, and you're hoping that some people will respond and you'll get some responses. And in this method, it is not like on the phone where you're calling them and then they have to actually answer the question while being on the call. You're just sending the questionnaire and they're going to fill it whenever possible. Probably this is one of the least response rate and slower data collection than telephone, because it is least for you to collect some set of data. It is going to take a lot more time, and sending the questionnaire to a lot of people and expecting them to respond, there's going to be a slower time in terms of collecting this data. Right, so hopefully that's making sense. So what all we have seen like personal. So before that we saw personal, telephone, mail, web, and hybrid methods. I'm just going through one of them: personal, telephone, mail, and web. Web is the one that is mostly done now, because if you have a survey questionnaire to collect data, you'll probably put it in Google and collect information. Having a Google questionnaire, throw the questionnaire to your friends in social network, link it to some web pages, and get people to fill the questionnaire. When you do this web, again, the participants can be international. You can connect to anybody who has anywhere in the world, and anybody who has connectivity to internet, and you can also build in some complex patterns in asking the question. That's something I've also tried before, where complex skipping and complex algorithms, so to say, how the questionnaire should flow. It's actually pretty easy to do through SurveyMonkey or other forms, other services that are available to create these kind of questionnaire. And in this case, only people with a computer, or only people with the phone, only people with the internet are actually able to fill the survey. And because of different operating systems, different browsers, there may be the way it is showing up. The questionnaire may show up differently in different browsers, probably differently in different OS, and all that. Those kind of constraints are also there in collecting the data. Some of the reasons how you can actually decide which method to use, because now that you know there are many ways of collecting data, which method to use. We did not speak about a hybrid method is one where you could actually do a combination of this. For example, one of the studies that I've done in the past, where we collected personal, we did mail, and we did web also, right? So that's like the hybrid method. But it's not necessarily that every method has to be used in a particular scenario, or as a researcher, as a person designing the system, you should not be thinking always only using I'm sure one of these methods will become your favorite method of data collection, because I've seen many people having favorite methods for data collections, like interview, right? Interviews, many people like doing just interviews because that just lets them to hear people out, and it gets a lot of other directions, other responses that they would like to see. Now let's look at how to decide the mode of which method to use in collecting data. And the methods that we have seen now, not necessarily that all methods can be used in a given scenario, and I'm sure you will also see that you will get more, so to say, closer to a particular method. One of the methods will become your favorite methods. Anytime you want to collect data, you will probably end up collecting data through that methodology. So let's now look at how to actually decide on which method to use, right? So first question that you want to ask is, what is the population that you want to study? Sample frame or sample that you want to study? Because if you remember, some methods have actually constraints about how large the data collection can be. What type of questions that you want to ask? If it's complicated, then you can't actually use the telephone one. If it's complicated, then it's probably a better approach to do a physical one or through the web. What is the response rate that you're looking for? If you're looking for very high response rate, probably physical is a better one. What is the budget that you have? If you have infinite money, which is probably not the case in many of the situations, you want to look at the budget and then make the decision on how much you want to spend and which method you want to actually use. What is the time duration that you have, right? Because some, as we saw in the physical mail, it's going to take a long time. In the web, probably it's going to take a lesser time because you're probably putting it on your social network, you're putting it on different websites. So some people will look at it, and even though the response rate is very low, but it can actually reach to a large people very quickly. Right? So now what we'll look at is we will look at how to actually create good questions, right? Because see, one is methodological strength on what method to use, what are goods and bads of each method of collecting data, right? The next one that we will see is how to write good questions itself, how to develop these questions, and what kind of pitfalls that are there while asking some type of questions, what kind of methods that you need to take, what kind of ways that you need to create questions to get actually sometimes good response, and not just good response, I think response which are useful for what you're looking for. Right? So why create a questionnaire? Collect qualitative and quantitative data to understand the respondent's view. More information from respondents is good for research, right? So I think it's very intuitive that we need the questionnaire to collect data about what users, so our goal is what users are thinking. That's what, right? User needs is the goal that we have. Okay, some type of questions. I think I have some examples later in the slide deck to just give you how you can actually create some questions. So question types, closed one, open one, closed questions, how many emails do you receive? And all these questions I've used in my studies in the past. So it's real examples of what I've actually used. How many emails do you receive per day? Less than 40, 11 to 40, 41 to 100, greater than 100. So in the way of asking the questions, the way that you can do on the web at least is you can have a radio button for all the 4 options, and then somebody clicks one of them, or you can have a drop down with all the 4 showing up, and then you can actually pick, the respondent can pick one of them. The thing that you want to keep in mind is that the option should be mutually exclusive. That's why if you see here, it's less than 10, 11 to 40, 41 to 100, right? You can't write 10 to 40, 40 to 100, right? Could be simple yes or no, approve or disapprove, 3 or more options. So you can actually think of it, closed questions as having short responses, but if it's a long response, think through it, radio buttons and drop down buttons, you can actually set it up. Advantages: restricted to finite set of responses because the users are only made to think in that set. Easy to answer because I don't have to apply my head what the answers are. It's quick to answer because I just have to look at the 4 things and I have to click what I think that is the appropriate answer. Easy to code and analyze because for you it is at the end of the day some option A, B, C, D. You will use it in your analysis that you want, right? So those are the advantages of actually having a closed question. Disadvantages because it introduces bias to choose from given options because there could be another option that a user would like to add. Now, meaning in the web, you can actually have others. In a questionnaire form, you can actually have others. But the problem with the others is that whatever you get there, the way you want to analyze it, the way you would like to analyze it will be actually pretty hard. Do not allow for creativity, right? Because it just allows people to only look at those options. Does not allow respondent to qualify the response. Number of emails, right? Number of emails that they get, they can't really say, okay, how much of them are ham, spam, and phishing. Skills to create questions mutually exclusive because it's not that easy to actually create these kind of mutually exclusive questions. Meaning, I think the example that I have is pretty simple, but if you generate more and more these kind of questions, you will realize that the problems are not that simple. Open-ended questions. What do you like most about this course? Right, so that's an open-ended question where NPTEL is also sending out some questionnaire every week to get your feedback on the course. You're filling out some responses, right? So that's the feedback mechanism that NPTEL has for the course. And in one of the questions there also, what do you think, what do you like most about the course? Right? It's a text box that you can actually fill. Advantages: express respondents' ideas in their own language, very useful in exploratory studies because it's just helping, asking you questions. You can get answers in different directions, which will help you to think well through the point that you are interested in collecting data. It's difficult to respond because if you're asking me, well, what do you think about the course? I said, yeah, good, sometimes nothing, right? You won't be able to actually, so to say, normalize the response of different respondents. Difficult to analyze, which is exactly the point that I was saying. Handwritten may be difficult to read too, right? Because if you're making a data collection method to personal interactions, then I think whatever is written in hand will be actually hard to read. General guidelines for creating good questionnaire: keep the vocabulary simple, avoid acronyms, too much technical jargons, keep the questions short, 25 words or less, avoid double barrel questions. I think double barrel questions is one type of error that you will see many questioners have. Do you think the training material that was presented to you was engaging and effective? And the responses would be yes or a no. But then if I give you S, am I giving it was engaging or was it for effective? These are called double barrel questions, where two things are measured with just one response, which is actually a bad way of asking questions. Avoid hypothetical questions, right? Would you use LaTeX for writing homeworks in other courses, right? Meaning if that's not the situation that we are trying to study, don't create hypothetical questions. Don't tax respondents' memory. How many hours have you spent reading research papers in the last month? Right? How many hours do you spend reading the research papers in the last month? So that's basically saying that, I have to think, okay, month is 4 weeks, 1 week has 168 hours, so many hours, and then so that's like too much of work for the respondent. Avoid double negatives. Students should not be allowed to speak in the class. Agree or disagree. Avoid double negative questions. That is, students should not be allowed to speak in the class. Agree or disagree. Meaning disagree is going to be a double negative here. So it may be hard for, what am I agreeing, what am I disagreeing for, will be hard for the respondents to decide on. Avoid overlapping responses, which I said before, 10 to 20, 20 to 40, 20 is there in both the responses. Which one do I fill? Avoid leading questions. You wouldn't say that the training material was poorly designed, would you? Right? So you're kind of, this I think later also we'll see in the course, it's called priming, right? You're already priming the person saying it was poorly designed, right? Be as clear as possible. What do you think about IIIT Delhi? What recommendations would you have to improve your experience at IIIT Delhi, right? So those are the kind of questions that you should ask, which is be more specific, which is what recommendations would you have to improve your experience at IIIT Delhi? What recommendations would you have to increase your experience, increase your understanding of the HCA topic through this course? Keep demographics at the last. I think this is a general guideline that I have, which is that don't ask this question, but particularly some of these sensitive questions, right? Gender, age, salary, all of this, when it comes in demographics, it's better to actually keep it at the last. And another one that you want to do generally is that you want to actually make sure that you ask some critical questions. There are also many methods to ask these kind of questions. Place them differently in different places in the questionnaire, and you can actually get the same question asked multiple times to see whether they're giving the same response. What this will allow you is it will allow you to check whether it is whether it's a bot or something like that, but at least the user is reading the responses and not just clicking whatever he or she finds as first one or the second one or any random one that they're clicking. At least that will be avoided from this, asking the same questions in multiple places. Okay, checklist for some questionnaire. Will the question provide any useful data? Make sure that you ask these questions when you're actually collecting the data, because these are the ones that will help you to say whether we want this question at all, what kind of questions you should change. Will the question provide any useful data? Is the questions unbiased? Right? Is the response at the level that is needed for analysis? Right? Are you looking for, because you may be looking for some data that is more fine-grained, but the question that you're asking is coarse, right? Or the other way around, you're asking a very fine-grained detail, but the analysis that you want to do is only at the aggregate level. So you want to be very clear on what response do you want, and accordingly actually pitch the question. So one suggestion that I generally give to people for this also is that please do pilot studies. Pilot studies are super important for collecting data, because I think it is necessary to do pilot study, is because when you do pilot study you will understand the mistakes that people are making while filling the answers, or the mistakes that you have made in the questionnaire that you have asked. Will the respondents provide answers, right? Sensitive, risky, so therefore do you think the respondents will provide answers to the questions that you're asking? You want to be clear about some of these questions. You want to have these checklists while creating your questionnaire. Does the questionnaire have any leading questions, which I was saying earlier, right? Priming questions. Is the language clear and simple? Demographics, general demographics that people collect are age, gender, highest education, occupation, salary, all of that. So what I'll do is I'll come back and show you the SurveyMonkey approved. It's the survey that I actually did for the IRB study that I was showing you earlier. I have a URL here. I would let you to go look at it also, but I can also show you quickly what is the questionnaire have. So now what I will do is I will actually show you the actual survey that I used while collecting data from the IRB study. If you remember the IRB approved documents application that we saw, from that study, I'm going to actually show you a questionnaire that we used for data collection. So this is the questionnaire that I was wanting to show you, which has the questions exactly derived from the IRB applications and proposal that we saw earlier in the course. So here, where do you most often use computers? What type of computer do you primarily use? Approximately how long have you been using the internet? Approximately how many hours a week do you spend on using internet services? Which web browser do you use most often? Have you ever changed the preferences? So if you see, these are the kind of questions that you can use. Given that the link is on the slides, you could also go take a look at it. So this is also slightly complicated if you see. So if you see here, have you ever created a web page? If it says no, please skip to question number. So if it's a 10, it will jump to question number, or we are asking you to jump to question number 10. There are some online tools where you can actually set these questions, so it automatically jumps to question number 10 also. I'll let you to go through it yourself and take a look at the questions that are available and how you can actually make use of it in your own studies.